Now live. My sermon tonight, I'm not good at titles, so I'm just going to skip that part. It has something to do with Mountaintops, okay? I want to read to you, I just want to kind of read to you and paraphrase a story about Jesus to start off with. We're just going to start with the story. I'm not going to go any really deeper than that. I'm not going to give any side notes at this point yet. I just want to read to you from Matthew 17. It says, "And after 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John, his brother, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured, as in transformed before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. And behold, there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. And Peter said to Jesus, 'Lord, it's good that we are here. If you wish, I'll make 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah.' He was still speaking when, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, 'This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him.' When the disciples heard this, they fell on their faces and were terrified. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, 'Rise and have no fear.' And when they lifted up their eyes, they saw no one but Jesus only. And as they were coming down the mountain, Jesus commanded them, 'Tell no one the vision until the Son of Man is raised from the dead.'" So what's happening in that story? Essentially, as you heard, Jesus goes up on the mountain with his 3 best buddies. They go up there. The buddies go up there with Jesus, and they realize, oh, we're not alone. 2 men come down from heaven, Moses and Elijah from the Old Testament, and Jesus is transformed almost into maybe his real form. There's this light about him. There's this brightness about him. He's not really human-like at this point. He has the human form, but something is more radiant about who he is in this moment. And he has a conversation with Moses and Elijah. He's at a high point. I mean, not to mention, he's on a mountain, okay, so it's definitely high. But he's at a very, very important point in his ministry. A turning point, some would say. And we're not really going to get into that, but I just want you to understand, this was a very spiritual experience. How many of you would say that's a pretty spiritual experience? Especially for Peter, James, and John. Going up on a mountain with Jesus himself, and all of a sudden he starts shining really, really bright. That's a bit of a spiritual experience that none of us here have experienced, okay? It's probably like seeing an angel, but maybe even better. Right? The kind of experience that probably Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had when they went into the fiery furnace and all of a sudden there was a 4th guy in there just like, what's up? You know? It's definitely a very, don't look at me like that, a very spiritual experience that they were having this night on the mountain. See, many of you are about to go this weekend and have a very spiritual experience at youth convention. Maybe you've had a really spiritual experience here on a Wednesday night, or a Sunday night, or a Sunday morning, or at some other place you've had some spiritual experience and you got real high. Not high on drugs, obviously, but maybe you got high on Jesus. You got elated. You got excited about who God was. You got on fire for the Lord. It was a great experience. But you know what happened after Jesus had this transformation? You know what happened after Peter, James, and John saw what they saw? They had to go back down the mountain. And when they came to the crowd, a man came up to him and kneeling before Jesus said, "Lord, have mercy on my son, for he has seizures, and he suffers terribly. For often he falls into the fire and often into the water. And I brought him to your disciples, and they could not heal him." And Jesus answered, "O faithless and twisted generation, how long am I to be with you? How long am I to bear with you? Bring him here to me." And Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him, and the boy was healed instantly. See, really what I'm trying to hit on tonight is that Jesus and his disciples had to come back down the mountain. And what they faced when they came down the mountain wasn't the same kind of spiritual experience they had when they were up on top. Many of you have been in a high place before. I mean, yeah, you're probably going to experience that this weekend if you go to youth convention, but the reality is that you've probably been there before. All of you have been to most of you have been to some sort of church event like camp, lead weekend, youth convention, sometime, maybe even just a church service here where you've had an experience with God and you felt like this was your big break. It was the moment. Maybe you felt like you got free from this sin or something, or like Jesus just took over your life, and then what happened? A few weeks later, everything was the same again. Many of you have experienced God and you've come out a little different after one time. Maybe some of you have gone to camp and you can honestly say, you know what, since the time of camp, I've not been the same. Like maybe I've made some mistakes along the way, but I am a different person. I decided to be a different person that day. Many of you have experienced God in such a way that the fire was lit in your heart for Him. But then again, you had to come back down the mountain. Coming down the mountain is inevitable. You can't stay on a mountain forever. It has to happen. Eventually, you have to go back down to the real world. No matter how great it feels to stay in that high place spiritually. You always have to come back down the mountain. See, Billy Graham's the one that said, the mountaintops are for views, but fruit is grown in the valley. You always have to come back down from the mountain. Those experiences won't last forever. It didn't even last forever for Jesus and his disciples when they were up on the mountain. They had this amazing experience. I mean, how could you walk away from that and just go into the world and act the same? Or how could you just go back into the world and not want to go right back up the mountain? How could you want to leave that place after what you just experienced was something so powerful and the presence of God was there in such a way? Why would you want to go back down the mountain? But you have to. 13. You have to. Let me think about it. Let me put it in more simpler terms for you. Maybe you haven't experienced anything. Maybe you haven't gone to one of those things. Or maybe you have, but regardless. Maybe it's like, how many of you wish you could go back to your best memories?
Yeah.
The best, everybody, for a second, think of the best day of your life. Think of the best. Try and think. You know what? Until a few months ago, I didn't consider any days better than the others. Okay, but that's kind of changed a little bit, so you don't know what I'm talking about. But regardless, thank you. Regardless, think of the best day of your life. Think of one of the favorite days of your life. The time you were the most excited, the time you were the most happy, the most joyous, and you didn't want to leave that day. Think of the highlights in your life. Think of the high points. Think of the best moments. We've just been watching footage of some of the highlights of youth group. Some of the best moments we've had. But you know what? Highlights aren't forever. Why do they call it a highlight reel in basketball? Because in between all those highlights, there are mistakes. And there's not as good playing. In between those dunks, those windmills, those crazy passes and nutmegs, whatever it is, in between all those, there's some pretty dull ball playing, right? Or there's some big mistakes. That's why it's called highlights don't last forever. They're brief. You can only have them for a moment. That's what highlights are. The best times in your life won't last forever. Let me give you a biblical example of somebody whose moment didn't last forever. Okay, like we kind of... The Bible does focus on a lot of the highlights, too, of people's lives, right? I mean, sometimes it talks about the bad times in their life, but we would consider those highlights because of what God brought them through. But let's talk about this guy named Moses, okay? What do you all know about Moses? Let's clear some things up. He was born in Egypt, raised in Egypt, left, came back, parted the Red Sea, right? All the great stuff that we remember.
He hit a rock.
Yeah, he hit a rock. We've talked about that, haven't we? There's a lot of great moments we can think about with Moses, but a lot of people forget that he was wandering. Well, a lot of people forget that he was just tending the sheep for 40 years. Like, that's a pretty dull life, you know? At least in my opinion. 40 years of Moses' life is not recorded in the Bible. I mean, we know he got married during that time and he had 2 sons, but like, we don't really know what happened. We only see the highlights. We only see, he was in Egypt, he was raised in, he left Egypt, met his father-in-law and his wife, and then it jumps to 40 years later, and all of a sudden God's saying, hey, from a burning bush, you go back to Egypt and say something. Right? We miss 40 years of his life. From the time he was 40 until he was 80, because maybe it wasn't necessary. But we can't forget that Moses had probably a pretty dull 40 years. I mean, it's a lot duller than parting a Red Sea and walking through it. I mean, if any of us just took a staff out to the Cumberland River, put it down, and like the water's parted, we would not forget that moment. I mean, that would be crazy. That's definitely a lot crazier than maybe the dull day you had today, right? Or maybe the dull day you're going to have tomorrow or yesterday. Or maybe you didn't have a dull day today, but that'd still be a lot crazier, right? We see all the highlights. We see all the good things. And sometimes we want to. And there's no problem with wanting to see all the highlights and all the good things. I don't like to reminisce on bad memories. I don't like to think about things in my life that were rough. I mean, some of them I've come to peace with in my past, but other things I don't want to think about. It's okay to want to focus on the highlights, but the reality is we've got to understand the highlights just don't last forever. Some of you, the example may be that maybe you were dating somebody for a long time, and the feelings weren't the same 3 or 4 months down the road as they were at the very beginning, and you wish you could go back to that time. Right? They call it the honeymoon stage, when it's like you're like really into each other, obsessive, and then all of a sudden something kind of changes and it's just not the same. I'm sure some people probably want to go back to that, but can you really? I mean, the highlights don't last forever. Like, you only get one day for a wedding, right? Like, it can only happen on one day, unless you're like some people, and maybe you get married separate, and then you like a private wedding, public wedding, whatever. But regardless, like, you actually only get married on one day. You only get one day for that. You can't marry somebody every day of your life. You can't say, man, you can't go up to Emma and be like, Emma, okay, let's just have a wedding every day of our life, because that's just my favorite kind of thing. Like, I love going to weddings, you know, but I can't go to a wedding every day. I can't go to a wedding every weekend, right? The highlights don't last forever. Your honeymoon's only going to last for a few days or a week or however long you go for it. It's not going to last forever. What are some other examples of really high points? Maybe I don't know. Those are the best two examples I can think of. But you get the concept, like, the highlights don't last forever. I cannot drill that in your head enough. People get on me because I'm very repetitive and I say things different ways, but I hope that gets the point across to you that, you know what, the best times in your life just aren't going to last. The highest moments, the most joyous times will not last forever. We wish they could. I wish they could in my life. There's days I look back on and I wish I could just relive that day over and over and over again, but I can't. I mean, I can relive it in my memory, but that's just not the same, right? Life goes on after the high moments. You know, any of you ever seen like a TV show or a movie series and like the finale came and you're like, man, that was just like the best movie out of all of them or whatever. Like that was crazy ending. Maybe it was a sad ending even. But then you have to really think about it. Like it's just the end of the story that we get to see. In reality, if we're just thinking on terms here, even though they're fictional characters, their story probably goes on. Right? I mean, life just goes on after the best and worst moments. And the reason I'm preaching this tonight is because about what a lot of you are about to experience this weekend. See, a lot of you are going to go to youth convention, or you've been to youth convention, you've been to camp, you've been somewhere, and you went and you had just a great time with the Lord. You were spiritual. You had this excessive amount of love for the Lord and overabundance of joy. You had a great experience. You felt like this is my big break. This is the time I'm going to go into the world and take it on. But see, when you come down from the high place, what happened when Jesus and his disciples came down from the mountain? Does anybody remember what I read a second ago? They got confronted with a demon. A guy comes to Jesus and says, hey, Jesus, you know, my son's got a demon. Could you take care of this problem? See, when you come down from the high place, the things of the world, the enemy start to challenge you. When you come down from those best moments, sometimes the worst moments are to follow. Sometimes the hardest times are to follow. The world starts to creep in a little bit. I'm not really saying Jesus was being challenged, because it wasn't really a big challenge for Jesus to have somebody come to him with a demon. That happened all the time, right? But it happened after such a high moment in his life, and after such a high moment in the disciples' life, and in that ministry time they got with Jesus. I mean, he was actually being asked for help, but he went from a place where everything was spiritual to a place where almost nothing was. And you all know what that feels like. Some of us have talked about that very recently. You know, the disciples came from a place extremely, super spiritual, finally to a place that there was really no presence at all, besides the fact that Jesus was right there with them. They come down, and what's present there when they come down from the mountain? Demons, darkness, evil, ungodliness. That's what was present when they came down the mountain. See, when you leave places like youth convention or church camp or just church in general or lead weekend or Riles conference or whatever it is you go to, and you go back home and go back to school, the world starts to challenge you a little bit, because you just had this great experience with the Lord, and the enemy can do everything he can in that moment to stifle that, to destroy it, to kind of slip you up a little bit, because, oh, they had a great experience with the Lord this weekend. Let's see what I can do to make them stumble, to make it fall apart. Let's see what I can do to impede their process, to slow them down a little bit, or get them to a point where they won't be in that high place again. See, but I really think that we don't teach enough on this. We don't hear enough about this. Because, so many youth pastors out there, so many pastors out there, so many leaders, so many children, teenagers are trying to figure out what in the world to do when you get on fire at church camp, and then all of a sudden school starts back at the end of summer, and like you just go back to being the same person you were. Maybe there's a little bit of a change there, but for the most part you go back to doing the same things, talking the same way, acting the same way. Why is it that can happen? Maybe it's even just weeks later, days later, during that summer. You go right back to the same sin that you were in before. What is it? And so many people are trying to figure out why is it. They try different things. They try devotionals. They try they try and do more youth events. Or I don't know what it is. I've tried before to find different things to keep me up spiritually, to keep you up spiritually. But I think I may have found the key. Let's talk about what Jesus did when him and his disciples came down the mountain. What did they do? Okay? Yeah, they were confronted with a boy with a demon. This guy comes up, hey, my son's got a demon. The demon tries to kill the boy a lot. Like, deal with this, please. You know, a lot of us would just raise our hands and say, you know what? I can't be around this. I'm just in a really good place with the Lord. There's demons here. It's darkness. Like, get me out of here. And you know what? That sounds pretty noble, right? I mean, hey, you know, I'm trying to cut the things out of my life that are bad, right? I mean, I'm trying to step away from these things. But did Jesus run away? I mean, yeah, so what? He was Jesus, right? But his disciples didn't run away either. What did they do with the boy with the demon? See, some of us coddle the darkness when we get back. We kind of try and treat it a little bit nicely. We go back into the world and we try and kind of pet the darkness a little bit. Yeah, just be a good boy. And you know what? If you just sit here next to me and don't try and get me to engage in what you're doing, it'll be all right. Some of us try and make friends with the darkness, and that's the worst thing you could do. See, Jesus and his disciples did not coddle the darkness. They didn't coddle the demon. But he didn't say, oh, come here, little buddy. Like, I'm sorry you got this demon inside of you. You're just going to hang out, you know, for a little bit and, like, give you some toys or something to play with and, like, we'll figure this out. I was just in a really good place spiritually. I can't be around this. They didn't say that. They didn't say, oh, my goodness, this darkness, like, we got to get away. No, they didn't accommodate the darkness or just simply settle in its presence. Jesus and his disciples opposed the darkness that confronted them when they came back into the world. When they came back down that mountain, they were confronted with darkness. They were opposed by darkness, and what did they do? They opposed it right back. We're to do the same. How does that apply practically? See, the reality is like, you go to camp, you go to convention, you come back to the world, you come back to school the next weekend, that boyfriend or that girlfriend that treats you the wrong way or tries to get you to do things or does get you to do things you shouldn't be doing with them. And you go back into that situation, and a lot of us, instead of standing up, we cower down. See, there's a big emphasis on the love of God and loving people in today's day and age, and I get that, right? I totally understand that concept. Like, we have got to be the love of Christ to people. His love will naturally flow through us and emanate out of us if we love him. But some of us have taken that love to mean, let's just tolerate the darkness. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to kind of cower back and not do anything about the darkness around me. When I'm confronted with these things, when I go back to school next week and my friends are cussing and my friends are talking a certain way inappropriately, or my boyfriend's pressuring me into certain things, or whatever it is, some of us kind of cower back and say, you know what, I can't be around this, or maybe we cower back and we think I've got to show them the love of Jesus, so I won't tell them that they're wrong. I won't do, like, that's kind of the concept we get into, right? But see, Jesus didn't come down the mountain and just say, it's a demon boy. The disciples didn't say, oh, it's a boy with a demon. Like, we're just in a really high place spiritually. We can't be around that. They didn't come down the mountain and say, oh, a demon, get him away. Like, we can't be dealing with this right now. I'm on the mountaintop. Like, I'm super happy. I'm super joyous. I'm super godly right now. No, they opposed the demon in the boy. They opposed the darkness that confronted them when they came down the mountain. See, once again, the highlights don't last forever. The mountaintops don't last forever. The best moments in your life will come to an end. The best times with the Lord, the situations you come at, youth convention is going to be over on Saturday. I hate to tell you that. I don't know if you knew that. But like Friday night, we're going to have a great service. Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, great services. But you know what? It's going to be over. You could say, oh, just 2 days till youth convention. Oh, well, 3 days till it's over. Right? It's going to be done. It's going to be over with. It's not going to last forever. So what do you do when that moment is over with? And then you're suddenly confronted with the world in your home, the world in the school. You've got to oppose it. Stand up and fight against it and not back down. See, James 4. In James 4, James says, you adulterous people, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God, meaning makes you an enemy of the Lord? Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. See, that's the thing. You've heard that phrase, I'm in the world, I'm just not of it. I think it rings true because we're to be in the world. Jesus prayed to his Father, don't take them out of the world. Let them stay in the world, but just don't let them be like the world. But see, some of us come back from camp and convention. Some of us come back from these situations. Some of us come back from these highlights and these high moments with the Lord, and all we do is we go and make friends with the world. We play it easy. We play it real easy when we go back into the world. Like I said, we kind of cower back. Oh, I got to show them the love of Jesus. I can't tell them that it's wrong. I'm just going to I'm going to sit and take this as they're giving it to me. Or my boyfriend pressured me into sex or something. Oh, you know what? I know that I just had a great experience with the Lord. I really don't want to, but you know what? I want to show them the love, and so I'm not going to fight against it. And I'm not trying to guilt anybody that's been in that situation, but think about what would change if we would just oppose the darkness that confronts us when we leave these places. Instead of becoming friends with the world, instead of playing it easy with the world, if we showed them that God lived in us and that He who is in us is greater than he that is in the world, and if that's the case, we don't have to be friends with the world. We don't have to cower back in fear and say, oh, a demon's confronting me now. What do I do? We can say, I was just in the high place, and you know what that means? When I come to the dark place, I can do something about it. See, you shouldn't come down from the high place and suddenly become like the dark one. When you come down from the high place, the purpose of being in the high place, the purpose of youth convention this weekend is so that you do go back into the world and you don't become like it again. The purpose of going to events like that, what's going to be preached, what's going to be taught, is so that when you go back to school next week, you're not the same person. And that you don't coddle and make friends with the darkness around you. And yet that's what everybody does when they go back. See, if friendship with the world makes us an enemy of God, all I'm going to really say is that God must be the enemy of the world, or I should say it this way, the world must be the enemy of God. So if we side with God, are we not to be, maybe to an extent, enemies of the world? Right? Not enemies of the people of the world, but enemies of the world and its darkness, and the things within it that are so ungodly. My eyes have been opened, especially recently. I had you all write out your testimonies and some different things on some note cards. My eyes have been opened to some of the stuff you deal with that I've never really thought about. Or maybe I have, but I just didn't let it quite get to me like I should have before. Of the kind of darkness you deal with every day. But I'm trying to tell you that this weekend, and not just this weekend, but anytime you go to church, you go to a situation, and you come back, you can fight and oppose the darkness with the power of God. It's time we stop becoming friends with the world. It's time we became enemies of the world. See, a few verses later it says, submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil and he will flee. If I'm putting those two together, really it just means when you submit yourself to God, you're going to resist the devil. Draw near to God and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded, is what James is saying to them. Notice he doesn't say, ask Jesus to cleanse your hands. Notice he doesn't say, ask Jesus to purify your heart. Notice he doesn't say, ask Jesus to fix you up. No, he says, you Landon Basham, cleanse your hands. You, Sidney Acree, purify your heart. There's Romans 12:1, you've heard that verse. It says, don't be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed. He doesn't say you've been transformed, he says be transformed. See, some of us, I think, get this idea that we're just going to go to convention, we're going to go to camp, have some crazy experience, and everything will be just like, we'll just be completely free, and like something like, we'll be on that high place forever. We won't ever have to worry about going back into the darkness. And we won't ever have to, like, maybe we know we're going to go back to school, but we just feel like we'll be up and on top of our game next time. But that's not really how it works. See, Jesus said, be transformed. Paul said in Romans, be transformed. He didn't say you've been transformed. He didn't say, you've been transformed at convention, it's okay. Like, don't worry, like, you're going to be fine when they come at you with demons and darkness and when you go to school next week. No, he said, be transformed continually. He says, in the present, be transformed, be continually transformed. See, some of us just think that high moment was just it, and that like everything's going to be different after that point, and that's just not the case. So what am I really getting at tonight? What am I really trying to say to you? I've been praying probably more about convention this week than I've prayed about anything like camp. I'll be honest, I've kind of slacked in the past about praying for you all when you go to camp or convention or lead weekend or rise, whatever it is. But this week I've been praying, and I asked the guys on Tuesday night to pray about convention this week because I just feel like there's a breaking point about to come for many of you and for us as a group as a whole in what God wants to do in your hearts and what He wants to do in your lives. How He wants to move in you. How He wants to change you. And I think it starts right here. It starts with recognizing that you're going to walk in this week and you're going to have a good experience. You're going to have a great experience. Many of you are maybe going to give up on things in your life that shouldn't be there. Many of you are going to choose life, spiritual life over death. But I think He's also trying to prepare you to say, you know what, but don't forget that next week you've got to go back to school. Don't forget that next week you're going to go home, but that you don't have to conform to that pattern. You don't have to be like that world that you walk into next week. He's trying to remind us beforehand that when you go to convention this week, don't just get so caught up in the moment that you forget that this moment is intended to transform you and change you for what's to come after. Don't get so caught up in the moment and just believe you're free. That's the same exact reason that I come in here sometimes and I'm like, you know what, I don't even want you to pray. I say, because I'll say, some of you will pray and say, God heal me, God change me, do whatever. And you'll walk out and think something happened, and it didn't really, because you have to make that decision yourself in a lot of cases. We're all going to go up on the mountain this week. It's just true. We're going to go up on the mountain. We're going to have a great time at youth convention. Those of you that are going, if you've never been to youth convention, let me just tell you, you're about to have an amazing time. You're about to have an incredible opportunity to see people you've known from other places, to come together as a youth group, spend some time together. But the reality is He's trying to tell us, you know what, this could be your weekend. Not because it's some highlight, but because you have to, because if you walk in with that understanding that I'm going to walk down the mountain after this weekend, and I must be prepared for that, then something might be different when you go in to the hot place. When you step out of the hot place, instead of making friends with the world, instead of cowering back and saying, oh, darkness, oh, evil, oh, all this, I don't know what to say to this. Instead, oppose that darkness by the power of God. Who says you have to be afraid? If the Lord is for us, who can stand against us? If God is for us, who can stand? And I just believe wholeheartedly that when you go this weekend and you have an experience with God, God's going to be for you from that moment on. I think He's already been for you. I think some of us haven't been for Him. But I believe that in that moment, if you say, God's for me, who can be against me? What do I have to fear? Whom shall I fear, knowing that God is for me and that He who lives inside of me this weekend is greater than he that's in the world? I believe next week when you stand before the darkness, you'll oppose it rather than coddle it, rather than make friends with it, rather than back away and cower back and say, I can't say no to this. You know what? If He who lives inside of you is greater than he that is in the world, you don't have to give in to peer pressure. You don't even have to give in to parental pressure if that's where the problem is. Right? There's a story I want to say it's 1st or 2nd Kings. I'll be honest, I don't remember the reference. I just remember reading it several times. And Elijah or Elisha, one of the two, I'm sorry, I should know this, but one of the two was standing on a mountaintop, and there was an army surrounding the city. There's an army coming against this place, and this prophet says, you know, it really doesn't matter, because Him who is for us is more than those who are against us. Notice He said more. God's one person, right? But He said, you know, this army may be 30,000, 40,000 people, but Him who is with us is more. He's greater than that pressure. He's more than those friends that are, or that boyfriend or girlfriend that pressures you into something you ought not to do. He is more than that. And if you'll recognize that now, when you come down from the high places, things will be so much different. I've said it before many times. You know what? I don't like going to places. You know, just be honest. I don't like going to ball games. I mean, as honest as we can be, it's not like I hate seeing anybody play basketball or anything. But for me, at least, I can feel the atmosphere there. It's definitely not a good one. And you're in that atmosphere every day at school. I say this, I've thought this a lot this week too. You all realize that, like, for some of the kids you go to school with, maybe even for you, school's the most positive environment you'll be in. Like, You want like some kids go home and they get abused. Some kids go home and they get molested and raped. And some kids go home and like all these different, like their home life isn't that great. And maybe, just maybe, school is the most positive environment they're in at any point in their life. And I think that's really sad because it's a very godless place too. Like understand, positivity and God aren't always the same. Okay? Just because a place is positive does not mean it's godly. In my opinion, McDonald's is a really positive place, but it has nothing to do with God, right? I love, like, that's a pretty happy place. They call it a Happy Meal for a reason, right? It's a happy place. Like, you go, you get food. It's a positive environment, one might say. Or maybe you're wanting to talk about maybe a nicer restaurant like Texas Roadhouse or something. That's a pretty positive environment, right? Steak and Shake's a pretty positive environment. But you know, it's also a godless environment. It has nothing to do with God. And I think that's a very sad truth that we have to recognize. You know what? Maybe the most positive environment you'll be in next week is school, but you are going to have to be the God in it. You're going to have to be the Jesus in it. That could be you. We're not going to pray tonight or spend any time at the altar because I just really believe that really this is more of a call because you're going to get 3 chances to go to the altar this weekend, maybe more. Maybe more. So really, my call to you tonight is simply to stand ready, not for convention and not for that high moment, but for what comes after. For recognizing you don't have to stand with the world. You are rather to oppose it. And that might be the best strategy at coming back from these high places, from these best moments, from these highlights. Jesus didn't toil with darkness. He didn't back down. He didn't cower back. He didn't just tolerate the darkness. He started to fight against it when he came back down. The disciples started to fight against it when they came back down. Shouldn't we do the same? If y'all would bow your heads with me. God, I just want to thank you for this opportunity to be here. I want to thank you for the heart that you have given these students to come and be a part. I just ask that you show us the way. You show us the way, God. God, I don't fully ever understand your word. There are times that I read it and I don't fully understand, God. And I don't know what you mean. I don't know how to do the things I wish I could do. I don't know how to live free at times, Lord. But you can show us and you can do it in our heart. And I believe this weekend is going to be very crucial for many of the young people in here, God. And for our youth group as a whole, as you guide and lead us into a greater, deeper pursuit of you and who you are and what you want to do in our lives and in this group, in this church, in this community, God. As we fight and oppose the darkness, God, may we take it upon ourselves that when we come back from the high moments, when we come back from the best times, instead of toying with the darkness, instead of joining with the darkness, God, we fight against it. We actively oppose it. We say no to the very evil that confronts us. We run it out. I pray all these things in the mighty, awesome, powerful name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. Yeah, I'm going to do that in a second. One last thing I want to say. You all probably remember the sermon I preached. I talked about how we're called to be the light in the darkness, and that really I believe that that God's intention for Christians to be able to walk into a place, and when they go there, the darkness knows its time is almost up. See, when Jesus came around demons, and when Paul came around demons, and when Peter came around demons, what did the demons do? They taunted, they mocked, because that was all they could do, because they recognized their time there was limited now. The real hero had walked in the room. Their biggest enemy had come in. The presence of God was in the place, which meant their time was up. All they could do, they couldn't even fight. Physically fighting was of no use. Taunting and mocking was all they could do, right? Some of us have enemies that are bigger than us, and the best thing we can do is just talk to them. Just mock them. Right? Okay, let's just an example. Like, when somebody knows they can't win a fight with somebody, a lot of times they talk down to them, right? Like let's start, for example, Basham's a lot taller than me, right? Maybe instead of fighting him, I might just try and destroy him by my words, right? Maybe instead of like trying to beat him up, I might just try and start talking bad about him and hope that everybody else kind of joins my side. I think that's the kind of the way the enemy works, because the enemy knows that physically trying to fight Jesus, trying to fight him, it ain't going to do anything, because the power of God is present. And so all it can do is mock. All it can do is taunt. And say, oh yeah, so what? What are you going to do? But it's time that when we went somewhere like a school ball game, people could feel the Spirit emanating from us. And suddenly that environment not changed, because it's not about changing the environment. Listen, you can change the environment. If you ever look up Hitler's home look up where Hitler lived, okay? His home was beautiful. He had a mountaintop view. Any of us would probably kill to live with that view. But you know what? He's probably the most evil man that ever lived. Some people say you're a product of your environment, and I'm just not sure that's always quite true. I mean, maybe when you're a child, maybe in certain situations you are, but Hitler, if he was a product of his environment, I'm sure he would have been a lot nicer guy. See, it's not about changing the environment, because, you can change the environment, not a person gets changed by it. It's about changing those people around us. It's about walking in the room and them knowing the presence of God walks with this person, stands with this person, so they join in with that. Or maybe they oppose it, but maybe God's power is too much for it. So I just want you to take that with us. I'm super excited for, do you mind turning off that camera for me? I don't want it to run too much and run down the battery. Just close up the panel and it'll do it. I'm going to show the video that we made last week, but before I do that, I do want to talk about a couple of things for Youth Convention, okay?